Today's ad from 1957. With children heading back to school, just remember that school days are Hydrox days. Yes, Sunshine Hydrox cookies. The perfect pairing of chocolate wafers and the most thrilling vanilla filling. Nothing's in a class with Hydrox. The original cream-filled chocolate cookie, the finest ever made.
I'll let you move us into the 90s, Pat.
Okay. So I had a couple different ones I thought about for the 90s, but they all kind of have the same idea behind them, which is me being an insufferable kid.
Insufferable kid?
I'm still insufferable, but
all right, just making sure we're
this is definitely
we know where we're standing.
A pivot point when it comes to that. So in the 90s, that's kind of all of our really formative years, becoming teenagers and all that. Yes, Ken.
I know you're building something. I just want to jump back. Should we drop in our honorable mentions for the 80s right now and then go to the 90s, or just do all of them in a block later on?
We can do it right now. We'll get them out of the way.
Yeah, but just like then at each different
sure.
time interval. Sorry.
All right, so Pat, you can go with your honorable mentions for the 80s before you.
Let me get to my list.
I'm not gonna let you do
so
shit. I'm moving on,
80s,
Pat. All right, into the 2020s. You've lost.
I'm done.
Into the 2020s. We're just now movies in the last year and a half that have been formative to us 40-year-olds.
In the last 6 weeks that have changed your life. I think these probably both appear on your list as well, but it is the first ones that popped up were Batman.
Every punk in this town is scared stiff. They say he can't be killed. They say he drinks blood.
Is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Vicky Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
He's a tired old man. Can't run this city without me. Your luck is about to change. Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Just because I definitely remember that's the first movie I remember going to a walk-in theater to see. Like I remember Movies 8 in Palmdale being packed and a line out the door, buying those $3 super expensive tickets because it was a new premiere. See, like the whole thing, that experience definitely sticks with me. Another would be Aliens. My mom loved the Aliens franchise, so I have seen that movie 100 times.
There she is. Get your light up here.
Keep back, don't scare her.
Movement. Talk to me, Hudson.
I got signals. I got readings in front and behind.
There's nothing back here.
Look, I'm telling you, there's something moving and it ain't us.
Get them out of there.
How could they cut the power, man? They're animals.
Like just on loop.
How's your mom doing with Prometheus and stuff now?
She thankfully passed before she could see those, and probably for the best.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't think those would have been big hits.
Fair enough.
It's weird to say she thankfully passed, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
What does it even mean, Pat?
Yeah, I definitely would have gotten a call. Like, what was that? Like,
not how
I don't know,
works.
man. I just work
That's
here.
not how any of this works.
I believe, was Roadhouse 80s or 90s? I may be off on that.
I believe Roadhouse is like 80.
That feels 80s.
89.
I know it feels 80s, but I would say Roadhouse is up there just because,
80s.
It's Roadhouse.
89.
Could you like
89.
take it on men's jugulars?
Exactly. And I mean, just the villain and like, well, how do you know?
Not while my scrotum is pressed up against my stomach in these jeans, they won't. Roadhouse.
Well, how do you know he's a bad guy? Well, first, he's going to just drive all over the road as if he owns it. Literally. He's just going to do snakes. Just going to slither down.
And then
do the most obnoxious thing.
And then making love to women in closets.
Yeah,
to get caught.
That's villain sex. Batman wouldn't do that.
That was one of the things where it's like, again, watching the film with the parents, and then like that scene comes on, and it's there for a minute and then gone. I'm like, wait, am I supposed to feel bad about that? I'm not controlling us watching this movie, but it's on the screen. I don't know.
Ken, why was this your selection?
It's quick enough.
In a row.
Because Ken likes to party.
Yeah, right.
I will, in honor of my fiance, I will say The Princess Bride.
Grandpa, what did you read me this thing for?
Well, who says life is fair? Where is that written? Fencing, fighting, chases, escapes, giants, monsters, torture, revenge, true love, miracles.
That's 80s? That's 80s. Yeah.
Okay.
That's like peak Fred Savage.
Yeah.
You snuck in here, Michelle.
Yeah. Good job, Michelle. See, thumbs up. She cannot hear me. So.
Now you said that, and everybody's gonna watch this video and be like, "Wait, we get shout outs for movie picks." I have an '80s movie pick, and that's gonna. I think she's napping right now. So, future Ebony, I'm sorry.
Maybe you can send it to me later, and I'll swipe it through the screen real quick.
Bring it in.
Yeah. Like you said, Pat, I'll be real quick with mine too, because we do share.
Yeah,
we do share Batman as our notables, because, like I said, earlier before I guess we got rolling, that was my first VHS, my own personal VHS. Before when I started my collection, so I got to watch it constantly. The Karate Kid was another one for me.
Karate lesson for all life. Why train?
So I won't have to fight.
Hey, Karate Kid, let's see the move.
No points or no points. You're dead meat.
I don't have much of a cheering section.
You got me.
In the end, it will be in Daniel's hands. In his body. And most of all, in his mind.
Concentrate, focus, power. Remember balance. No mercy.
Columbia Pictures present The Karate Kid.
Hey, what kind of...
Just because, it was, again, one of those localized events for a teenager. And I was like, hey, and also at the time, I just started doing martial arts. So as you can see, my next pick was also influenced by that, because I thought I could envision myself as these guys. So Bloodsport was the next one. So it was really a real range of martial arts between like humbling New York kid or New Jersey kid to Frank Dukes.
Known as the Kumite, open only to the world's most lethal warriors. It has never been won by a Westerner.
You are not Japanese. I can do it.
Now, for the first time.
You went from 0 to 100 pretty quick there. I am legally required to mention, whenever the Karate Kid is brought up, is the apartment complex where it is filmed.
Oh, yeah.
We were living there at the time. Mr. Miyagi's place is my dad's garage. And technically, I have been told, and I believe I've seen it, that early in the movie, LaRusso's walking by a window and it looks blacked out, like the side. My very, very under 1-year-old face would appear there with my mom, but they put a little screen over it. And I have reconfirmed this with my father multiple times just to make sure I'm not insane.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're in the Karate Kid.
Kinda.
I mean, you could have kicked LaRusso's ass, judging by the way this guy fumbled around.
Not a high bar.
So those are my 3 mentions, which is Batman and 2 martial arts films.
Those are good. A Karate Kid is definitely worth being on this list for sure. Bloodsport as well, because that's, I mean, early Van Damme, definitely formative. Like those are good. I like everyone's comments so far, and of course, Alien's definitely solid.
What did you got? What do you have getting to
for
close
my
out the 80s?
Yeah, close out the 80s for my honorable mentions is Goonies. Like
Yes.
that's I mean, as far as like just like what it needs to be as part of like the lexicon of Ken is Goonies.
Hey, my found the map. Whoa, do you guys realize what we could do? I don't want to go on any more of your crazy Goonie adventures.
Meet Mikey,
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Brand, Andy,
Shame. Come on, Brand. Slip her the tongue. That's disgusting. No, I can't even look.
Mouse,
I gotcha. Now get out from behind her. You're ruining the painting. You're ruining my joke.
Stephanie, Data,
Booty banger. Oh, guys, isn't that neat?
and Chunk.
Locked.
They call themselves the Goonies.
I feel like that's a mixture of that coming of age plus like action adventure, like journey thing. It's such a good one.
Yeah, and it's also it's like action adventure, and there's some suspense, but it's also like lighthearted at times, and it needs to be.
Mhm.
It's such a really good just like combination of everything that's kind of comes together there.
Yeah.
I also have Return of the Jedi because 83 Star Wars. I mean, you can't not. Star Wars is obviously a huge part of just culture in general at this point, but it's also it's like I wanted to mention it, but also felt like I had more because of the cartoons and because of the sequels. Ghostbusters had more of a hold on my life to a degree. And then Back to the Future, because that's another one where it's just like, that's absolutely formative. But the sequels are great too, and they had a cartoon as well. I just don't think it had as much a hold as Ghostbusters did. But another movie that is, again, sound. All of these also have great soundtracks that you play a little bit of the tune, and you're like, oh wait, no, I know this is where they're in the cave, or this is right when Marty, drives over the Lone Pine Mall trees, so that later on becomes Twin Pine Mall, or reverse that.
Mhm.
Like those are that's right there in my head.
Yeah.
I mean, that Back to the Future, to me, that soundtrack in and of itself, just that when the dun-dun-dun, like
that score is just like boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going into the 90s, Pat, how did you?
So, as basically with the 90s, like there's a billion movies. It's when a lot of our formative years happened at that time, obviously, just given our age range. I picked a movie not so much because of the cultural impact it had, but the impact it had on me, because it was probably the first quote unquote not adult, but not that kind of adult movie. I was like, oh, I like this movie. And that is The Hunt for Red October. Now,
Sean Connery fan.
The movie came out
The most deadly submarine ever built.
This thing could park a couple of hundred warheads off Washington. Nobody'd know a thing about it until it was all over.
And once more, we play our dangerous game with our old adversaries, the American Navy.
His plan is a mystery.
A man with your responsibilities reading about the end of the world.
Apparently, he has suffered a kind of nervous breakdown in which he announced his intention to fire his missiles on the United States.
The movie came out, once again, soundtrack, you ever hear that?
He loves a
opening?
good Russian.
Who doesn't? A good Scott Russian.
The good Scott Russian.
Movie came out in 1990, so I didn't see it for a couple years until it was on, VHS. Same thing as always. I enjoyed the movie when I saw it. Like I probably saw it, my dad rented it, and I saw it with him. And I think a lot of it's tied into watching it with my dad. It's cool submarines, everybody's tense, and it's action. And everyone's like, there's some mystery involved to it as to what's actually happening.
And what accent was he had?
Exactly. That very
nebulous foreign accent.
That very, very Russian accent. 100%. So Russian. I think part of the reason I liked it though is because it felt like an adult movie. Like, oh, this is a film that adults watch, and oh, well, I like this too in some rudimentary way. So it became that like, oh, I like this type of movie. Not understanding how problematic Tom Clancy is in any way, shape, or form at that point. The submarines are cool.
That was amazing.
Yeah, it is a very good film. It's very enjoyable, but mostly it's because it starts that turn as the insufferable kid that like, well, I like this movie because this is mature, that kind of BS. Something like Pulp Fiction would fill that same role at that point, or movies like that. But The Hunt for October in particular, I remember renting it quite a couple of times. I remember always seeing it. Like, it hit that like KCOP channel 13 rotation.
For like 17 years. This is ridiculous.
This is so regional specific, but I love it because I'm right there with you.
You say regional, but I feel like it's just the name is regional. I feel like everyone on Sundays was like, everybody watch Hunt for Red October, or we watch Goldie Hawn and what's his name? What's the Overboard?
Overboard, yeah, and Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
And also Predator, which we forgot.
I actually thought you were. I thought you were going to go Bird on a Wire, the other Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn movie, which I did see a lot as well.
Yeah.
Well, if you couldn't afford one, you got the other.
Yeah.
They switch them out. Keep it spicy on Sundays.
Yeah.
And side note, with Hunt for October, I will still watch it when it comes on. Like, it's still a movie that I thoroughly enjoy, but it will have that like, oh, I'm trying to be an adult now, la dee da feel to it to me.
Oh, I mean, like you said, Pat. I think this actually leads into my 90s one. And maybe it's just because of what you were saying earlier about us kind of trying to be our own unique person while still being collectively assholish to each other. Mine's is Jurassic Park.
There it is. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
We've made living biological attractions so astounding that they'll capture the imagination of the entire planet.
The most phenomenal discovery of our time.
How'd you do this?
Becomes the greatest adventure of all time.
Can I touch it?
Sure.
Universal Pictures presents.
You feel that?
Hold on to your butts.
A Steven Spielberg film.
Fences are failing all over the park.
Yeah, that's nice. Gotta go.
An adventure.
Look out! No! I can't get Jurassic Park back online.
65 million years in the making. Jurassic Park.
And it's for many reasons. One because you get dinosaurs in a live action kind of setting. It isn't like, oh, this is an animated movie or anything like that. This is like, oh, they somehow made dinosaurs, and it was a visual feat. And I was like, oh, this is pretty amazing. But what really got me was I became a Michael Crichton elite, saying that I read the book. I became the book guy. Such an asshole. And he had such good movies. I mean, books. I loved his books, but in the movies would come out afterwards. I'd be like, read it. Did you read Michael Crichton's book? No, you didn't. You're an asshole.
No understanding of anything going on in the book.
None.
He had
so many pages of formulas that I would skip in Jurassic Park, and it'd be like, he would literally have just pages of formulas. I'm like, what is this junk? I'm sure it's science, but whatever. And it was also, and when I made the transition from reading normal books, normal size books, to like, the 700-800 page, 1,000-page books, because those were the way his books were written.
Yeah.
And I felt like I would, now looking back on it, I would suffer through it just to be able to say that I did it, and then be and then be rewarded with the movie that I can be like, ha, you didn't read it. You just watched the Congo. You have no idea.
Congo,
you don't know what I suffered through.
Sphere,
Congo,
please.
Congo deserves an honorable mention, by the way, because that, just for Tim Curry's accent alone.
Herkema Homolka, formerly of Romania, free now of the chains of Ceausescu, traveling the world, doing good. Yes, 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 I knew it was true. The city of Zinj, the diamonds. Every word of it was absolutely true. Fill up everything.
The diamonds.
Oh man, so it's interesting. Like both of your influence on movies for me, were like I remember Hunt for October. I still have never seen it to this day, and it's because like when it landed, it was one of the things my dad watched, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I care about the submarine movie. I'm gonna go play with my Ghostbusters.
Sometimes you got to impress your dad, man.
Yeah,
Sometimes
no,
you gotta
it's
impress your dad.
totally fine.
Or, I was gonna say, or me or Pat, because I feel like we would have bullied you if we'd have met you at that
Have
point.
you seen this?
You haven't read Michael Crichton yet? Some kind of simpleton.
Numbers, equations.
And then with Jurassic Park, so I didn't grow up super well off, and so I didn't get to see Jurassic Park in the theater, and so I had to wait for it to finally leave the theater and get to VHS, which, because that movie was so dang popular, it kept going and staying in rotation. And so I feels like I didn't watch Jurassic Park until a year after the phenomenon that was Jurassic Park had happened, and I watched it on a TV in our living room, and it was still crazy good and great, and visually, like, my God, they brought them back to life. But not seeing it in that collective of a theater where it's so massive, I didn't get that same, like, the same feels everyone else did at the same time. And so I definitely think Jurassic Park is up there.
That's why you should have read the book. Thank you.
Yep.
Your local library had it. That's why I read mine. That's why I read mine. I went to the library.
Because dollar theaters, like the like old movie theaters, those aren't really a thing till like the mid 90s, right? Like a couple years after Jurassic Park, if memory serves.
I would say at least in California too, because that's something that's more local to us. Is I do know people like Ebony would talk about how like watching stuff in the dollar theater and what that was in North Carolina, which would be slightly different, like run stuff than us. Kareem, did you ever have someone go like, "Oh, is that the mass market trade paperback, or did you read the hardcover?"
Yeah, I got made fun of for trying to make fun of people. It was embarrassing.
You're like, did you read it? Yes, I read it in hardcover.
I went to the library. I had to check the book out several times to finish it, and there'd be people like, "I own the book. I own this version of it, the tinfoil cover," and I'm like, "Mine's missing the first 13 pages."
Oh yeah, there ain't no way you're getting through on the 3 week limit with that.
I just pay the fee.
I love the one-upsmanship that had to play out there. That was just like, "Oh, you rented your Boswells from the library,
public library,
peasant."
All right,
mine
Ken.
signed by the author.
What's yours, Ken?
Yeah.
So for my 90s, it's funny. All this talk, I actually forgot what mine was. I'm jumping back to my list now. 90s for me was.
This is a good one.
Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Certificate. Bruce Lee. It sounded very American. I'm going to America. French fries. Sky's the limit, that's what they say.
Not a Chinaman's chance. They say that too.
I'm different.
You kind don't understand English. You guys killed my dad and Kareem. You think I'm happy to see you, my Jim?
Don't touch me.
Or what?
Huh? Or I'll touch you back.
You're not really an American.
This guy Lee is awfully oriental.
He's playing Oriental.
And you can't change people with your fists.
You kiss him. Kiss him. At least.
He defied tradition.
I'd like to take some lessons. I like to give them. Now, you know I'm not Chinese.
I've noticed that.
You've been charged with violating the martial arts code.
This is the first Bruce Lee Kung Fu Institute.
We do not teach our secrets to the enemy.
I'll teach whoever wants to learn.
Some of them chop socket flips, man.
He began a revolution.
I have developed a way of fighting with no fixed positions.
And became a leader.
You are ordered to stop teaching.
And this was, it ties in a little bit to what Kareem's Coming to America, because it's like it is the identity thing of seeing like, oh, I was so oddly enough from about 10, I'm sorry, from when I was born until I was maybe 10 or 11, I was told by my mother that I was half black, and that's you listen to your mother, folks. Like, you just kind of take what she says as truth. And then later on, I would come to be revealed that, oh no, actually you are half Asian, and that's your who we thought your father was is another story. And that's another, podcast for another time. But then at that time, I would definitely enjoyed a bunch of different media, and I saw Dragon the Bruce Lee story, and I absolutely loved it. Like, Jason Scott Lee does an amazing job playing Bruce Lee, telling his story. And there's one moment that always sticks with in my head, amongst others too, but where Shannon. Is his wife Shannon or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm trying to wait. No, the daughter is Shannon. God, I'm drawing a blank now. Yeah. But anyway, so they go to see her mom, and she says, "Oh, you're going around with that Asian boy. Do you want to have yellow babies?" As a kid, I'm like, "What the fuck is happening in this world?"
Her name's Linda.
Linda. Okay, Linda, right. And the daughter Shannon. And like the idea that like I was aware of racism, but the level to which I didn't know it because we were an inclusive household. We could but to hear someone say like, "Oh, you're gonna have yellow babies," I'm like, my world was blown. Like, how fucked up are people out there? Like, this is unbelievable. And then there's a great scene too where Linda and Bruce go out to a movie, and she's kind of blinded to certain things. Like, oh wait, they're watching Breakfast at Tiffany's. Like, oh, this is horribly offensive. What are we laughing at? And that was another great moment of like, oh, be aware of what's going on around you. And that these were kind of those building blocks that would form my idea of like, oh, definitely try and be more aware of your surroundings, and also seeing the fight and struggle that Bruce had to go through. We're on a first name basis. I had to go through to make it in the world, and amongst living in America, also filming in China, and also trying to make it, and also like having Kung Fu taken from him, the TV series, and only getting to play Kato, and also like, oh well, he can be a bigger star here, but he still wants to have a certain amount of success in the West, and all of that struggle. It's just so like, God, it's very emotional, very hits, and it's to your thing of if it's an adult film and like, oh, I'm having adult ideas, and it's something that I'm like, oh, this is different than just like, let's go shoot some ghosts. This was like, oh, this is real people. This is someone's life that was just almost always in struggle. I mean, he definitely had successes, but it's like, it sucks to see the struggle that he went through, and then also to see what would later on befall his son and that type of stuff. But I definitely love Jason Scott Lee has gone on to do other mini great series, and yeah.
No, I mean, I'm right there with you as this being one of the movies, and when I go to my honorable mentions, you'll see kind of a pattern where not only was I an elitist about reading books and watching movies, but I started developing an appetite, at least an understanding of autobiographies. Like there are a lot of people that, you would hear about either, if you went to school, depending on what your schools were, in history books, or you would, hear from your parents stories, or you'd see snippets of parts of their life. And then you would, when I got to, the 90s, I get to see these, dedicated movies about their lives. I got to, see things anecdotes that I had never known about them on film. And I felt like I was getting educated as well. So watching this movie, I was like, I had seen Bruce Lee in, karate movies because I was a fan of karate, but I didn't know anything about his life. I didn't know anything about his marriage. Like I just knew him for the actor that he was and the characters that he played. So to start getting an appetite for like, oh, what is behind this person that I've started to idolize, things like that. So this is one of the movies I was like, oh, this is super cool because I got to like learn something.
Yeah.
Ken, I'll also say that your adult moment movie is much more, I would say personal and mature than ours, which is ha ha ha, look how adult we are, ha ha ha. It is, there is a difference there, I would imagine.
Ken, did you read the book about Bruce Lee's life? Bet you Michael Crichton didn't write it.
No. Well, I just had a pamphlet, so you've decided to be Asian. It was really weird. It was an odd time.
They still make those.
The pamphlets were big in the 90s, so it's like it was definitely a different time.
It's quick to hand somebody at a grocery store.
Yeah.
What are your honorable mentions, Bat? What do you got for us?
For the 90s, my honorable mentions, as I stall to get to my list. I will say, if a movie ever taught me about disappointment, it was The Phantom Menace. That is definitely one you walk in hyped and then walk out not understanding what has happened to you as a person. And in hindsight, there's actually a lot of good in there, but there's some major drawbacks. It's tough.
There's a lot of good.
Liam Neeson's good.
There's a lot of potential.
Yeah, there's stuff there.
Good.
I feel like there's a lot of Liam Neeson mistakes in that movie.
Well,
a lot of bad decisions he made.
There's Qui-Gon Jinn mistakes. Liam Neeson's doing his thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'll also say for Ewan McGregor. I'm also on board for Mace Windu and Yoda. Like, there's
there's pieces. It is
Okay.
letting George Lucas completely drive without, bumpers on the side can be an issue. No offense, Georgie. No offense. It's first
All
name
the
basis,
offense.
I have Pulp Fiction on the list because that's probably the first movie that was adult that I think I understood and was like, oh, I understand this is a good film and it's different from other movies I've seen, and the cutting the way they did it for the time cuts and everything. I wanted to put a couple comedies on there, and the first two that popped up were There's Something About Mary, because I remember just the huge cultural hit that movie became. It's kind of like that moment and kind of defined that late 90s, early 2000s comedy in a lot of ways.
For sure. Yeah.
I also have Office Space on my list, and that probably has a lot more to do with life after college and understanding it a lot more than at the time.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Like, Pulp Fiction was definitely one of the ones where I got to appreciate film structure more than anything. Like, I watch a movie, like I watched The Bruce Lee Story, and I feel like I got educated about his life, but I didn't take, for instance, the timing, the way that the scenes were put together, things like that. But Pulp Fiction, because of the way it's shot and the way they kind of backtrack and then jump forward and then kind of go over, I started to wonder, at least, let my imagination run about how they filmed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one of those movies as well. Aside from all the cussing, I just loved all the cussing.
Yeah.
What does Marcellus Wallace look like?
What?
What country you from? What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what?
What?
English, motherfucker! Do you speak it?
Yes.
Then you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Describe what Marcellus Wallace looks like.
What?
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
He's black.
Go on.
He's bald.
Does he look like a bitch?
What?
Does he look like a bitch?
No!
Then why you try to fuck him like a bitch, Brett?
He didn't.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did, Brett. You tried to fuck him. And Marcellus Wallace don't like to be fucked by anybody except Mrs. Wallace. You read the Bible, Brett?
Yeah. Well,
it's good stuff.
Plus, John McClane's in it. That's cool.
Yeah.
The guy from Moonlighting? Heck yeah.
Oh, Moonlighting. We'll have to talk about that show at some point.
And we've got our TV shows coming up at some point. So
my honorable mentions are, and this is kind of going into what kind of shaped me wanting to, at some point join the FBI as well, was the movie 7.
Okay. Yeah.
Put the gun down. I saw you with the box. What was in the box?
Because I envy your normal life.
Put the gun down, David.
It seems that envy is my sin.
Oh, what's in the box? Not till you give me the what's gun. In the fucking box?
It was the first really like a detective thriller that I kind of grasped onto. One of obviously many in the future, but I was like, this is a really cool cop movie about high level crime that I hadn't started watching prior to that. The next one is Glory, and this is following as a child. As Ken's kind of talking about inclusion and representation, things like that. As a black kid, I watched Roots as a kid. It's one of those kind of rites of passage or whatever. But it wasn't until I got to see Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman and some other people kind of portray this, even at the time it's probably sanitized, but this sort of unsanitized version of history that I wasn't learning in the classroom, that I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome.
Look at you with your critical race thinking. Ugh, liberals.
Why is this got to be political, Kareem?
I'm sure we just got banned.
There you go. See,
we got to put this on Venmo, or was it Vimeo?
Yes, Vimeo.
Daily Motion.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Bad Boys, and that's because, again, I bought hook, line, and sinker the propaganda, but it was hilarious, and it was also one of those things where when I got dropped off at the bus or whatever, there's a movie theater, and I would save my lunch money to go watch that movie every day or as often as I could after I got dropped off. So my parents, and surprisingly, my parents weren't too worried about where I was at. like he should have been home, but they figured he went to the movie theater. It's a more trusting time back then, I guess.
It's the 90s.
When you started having them say, "Hey guys, just call me Mike Lowry. I want to be Mike Lowry." From now on."
No, you're not saying it right, Mike Lowry.
How do I
You're
know
saying
it's
it wrong.
Mike Lowry?
You gotta drag it out. What do you mean I gotta go to my room? You go to your room.
Don't you know who I am?
Mike's at his own apartment.
Lowry. Yeah.
And I also developed a crush on Tia Leoni at the time. So
That's fair. No, that's
that
100%.
I felt like she was the 90s Megan Fox.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, it's. I'm not.
I mean, she's
saying you're
an
wrong.
amazing
I'm also-
actress.
Did
No,
Michael Bay get angry at her too?
Oh.
I'm sure there's a story there somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like there probably is.
I mean, I kind of think just Michael Bay's angry at every woman. So
the parallels. Yeah,
well, I don't think
fair.
Michael Bay had the chance to get angry because this was his first.
That's fair.
Jaunt from making music videos, so he didn't have the pull that he has. I feel like he's taking out all of his anger that he would have had for Tia Leoni on Megan Fox.
Like he didn't get to say anything at the time.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh, you know what? Last time this happened, I didn't get to say anything.
I'm a big deal now. I'm important.
My voice will be heard."
Blooper trailer. We'll film it later.
Also, if cops were like the cops from Bad Boys, I think we'd all be a lot happier. So
I agree.
Yeah.
And how about you, Ken?
Yeah.
It was such a good movie. The comedy in that was another quotable one for me.
For sure. So we'll for my. It's funny because I'm like, I don't think I was looking at my list. I'm like, I have more in the 90s than I do in the 2000s. Like it's I was more formed by that time. So I'm like, okay, but the 90s I've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original live action Turtles. I mean, you go to the music, you've got, I mean, of course, the toys, the entire Turtle Mania that literally swept the nation, if not the world. We watched them in like
once again in New York.
They had
I feel like you were born in the wrong place, Pat. There, Ken.
Yeah, you know that Ebony would agree with you. She says you need to go there. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was so I can't even begin to, unless you live through Turtle Mania, it's hard to describe. Like it's like you think Game of Thrones was big. Like kids were this, like we ate pies covered in green frosting that had vanilla pudding and came with stickers. And to the Ecto Cooler point, I'm a very toy person apparently, because like the Ecto Cooler got me and those pudding pies got me.
Yes, the pudding pies got me.
I mean,
pudding pies were delicious.
Yeah,
they were.
You get the cassette tape.
I mean, they were made in lard, but they were delicious.
That's why they were delicious.
Exactly. You get the cassette tapes that would get you a free pizza at Pizza Hut for a little personal pan pizza.
Yes.
Like it was your world, and that movie is up there. That's why. I mean, it's definitely up there.
Well, it was also it also I felt like it was one of those precursors for those like internet things of like you answer a few questions and they kick you out like which character are you. I feel like at least for boys in my age range, we all kind of had to pick one of the four that we thought our personalities were.
Yeah, I mean, are you Raphael, the rude one, or Peter Venkman, or were you like the
exactly?
Were you the nerdy one, like Donatello? I mean, Egon. I mean, you had those things. I mean, people talk about
Winston Michelangelo.
Yeah, Winston would be. Oh wait, it was then you'd have
Ray can't be Leonardo.
Yeah, Ray can't be Leonardo, but he is the heart. So Ray. So Ray would be Michelangelo because he's the heart, and Michelangelo's the heart, and that makes Leonardo Winston.
Okay,
you know the steadfast, the
makes
direct
sense.
thinker. Yeah,
the one that's like, what is this bullshit? No.
Are we getting paid for it? We ain't doing it.
Yeah, no job is too big. No fee is too big. But yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is on there, and then I jumped to the back end where I've got Chasing Amy. That definitely like started to like, okay, no, I'm at this point, I'm 16. I'm starting to like, okay, this is also like my first Kevin Smith foray because I didn't get into Clerks because wasn't the right age. I would later on go back and watch Clerks and watch Mallrats and stuff and enjoy them. But Chasing Amy was like, what is this indie filmmaking? I don't understand. And then conversely, 10 Things I Hate About You, which is very much sugary popcorn, but it's also Shakespeare. So you have this type of movie that's like, oh, you can harken back to the past, but also put a new modern spin on it and have it be fun and light and play music that you might not have heard yet. But then also have Heath Ledger serenading a girl in the middle of an amphitheater and like just those big, Hollywoodish moments. Like that's hits.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think it's perfect. And I also feel like 10 Things I Hate About You was like the precursor to the entire CW thing. I think there's some guy, some executive like, we could serialize this somehow.
What if we make a
Capture that
network?
Yeah. They,
Just
by the way,
this.
I don't know if you're alluding to it, but they did make a TV show of 10 Things I Hate About You.
I was not. Did they really?
Yeah,
Julia
they did.
Stiles wasn't in it, so
No, yeah, none of them were in it.
Pat, why don't you talk about Julia Stiles a little bit?
she's the best.
If I had to hear one more Julia Stiles,
I had quite the
question-
crush on Julia Stiles back in the day.
And then just tune in next week for our Julia Stiles podcast.
Yeah.
And since
where are they now?
and since I did have a since Pat had the 80s comment shout out for his wife, my wife has now decided to she popped up. She's like, "Oh, you're talking about the 90s?"
Yeah,
and
what do
she
we
gave
got?
me a list of about 10 movies. I told her she had to give me 2. So we also have honorable mentions for Twister.
You just gotta breathe. We both just gotta breathe. Cow. I gotta go, Julia. We got cows. Another cow.
Actually, I think that was the same one.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
And Drew Barrymore's Ever After.
Oh, very nice.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
2 very good movie choices. Of course, Twister. I that's definitely one that I could definitely see there. Definitely worth noting. She had a list of about 10. I made her choose. Yeah.
Twister is it's a favorite of mine as well. I mean, just because I grew up in California, so we were used to earthquakes, but seeing devastation, again, we didn't have local reporting on no, I'm just saying the natural phenomenon. Like I was never introduced to that. Like I didn't grow up in the I didn't know what a hurricane was. I didn't know what a tornado was really. And so watching those things on TV, it became like the first instance of a movie like who directs the 2012 or Day After Tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
God,
I
that
can't
director
remember.
is.
Yeah.
Like that was my first foray into something like that.
Okay.
Big disaster films, I guess.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
I just the one thing. I mean, obviously everybody remembers the flying cow from
Yeah.
Twister, but just he's in it for the money. He's not in it for the science. He's in it for the money, man. Like there's a lot of just cash is just raining down on these tornado chases. Yeah.
There's
Big
some
bucks.
great video that they're like what were they like? Yeah, because that's a bad thing to want to get paid for what you're doing.
Yeah.
And they're just like, wait a minute, what are they saying? Like they're risking their life just like you, and then they get just unsummarily killed. It's like boom.
Yeah,
like,
because they got
they're
paid,
in it
man.
for the money.
Yeah, you ain't doing it for the love. You ain't doing it.
Yeah, I love how we villainize those people.
Yeah.
Well, there's a
Villainize to the
deeper-
point where we rationalize their death.
Yeah, that's
deeper amount of propaganda we could dive into.
Some psychosis we need to talk about. All right. Well, Pat, you got to walk us into the 2000s. Bring us closer to date.
All right. So 2000s, there's a multitude of movies. Couple on my honorable mentions, especially that could have taken this spot, obviously, but I picked one not just to piss Ken off.
I feel like
it helps. It helps, but
bonus. It's called a bonus.
Oh, bonus. Yeah, bonus. I'm gonna go with 2002
Player bonus.
Spider-Man. Now,
not everyone is meant to make a difference, but for me, the choice to live an ordinary life is no longer an option.
He saved my life twice, and I've never even seen his face.
Now, the reason I chose Spider-Man, first and
'Cause you're a
foremost,
dick.
yes, I am an asshole. Besides that, it was a huge cultural phenomenon at the time. Like it is, and I understand X-Men came out and it was a hit, and we had Blade before that. But outside of that, we
We
basically
had the Punisher before that.
Well, we're gonna have this conversation. All right.
with his level 2 intelligence. Yeah,
It shows definitely an Adolf
Dolph
Lundgren
Punisher
movie.
was a 1.5.
Yeah.
But
Spraying on a beard.
those both had very much the grim, dark aesthetic to it. The last fun, quote unquote, fun comic book movie had been Batman and Robin, if I'm remembering correctly, and that was not
that fun?
great.
I was gonna say that wasn't fun at all. That was fun for nobody.
It's a fever dream.
I unfortunately I do have positive feelings towards Batman and Robin.
Were you also on ecstasy watching that?
Well, it's just a matter of like there's a time period when you're a child and you're like, this is fun. I get to see another Batman movie, and so this makes me happy. And I was like, I'm watching Batman and Robin.
Yeah, but
the ticket? Like I paid for the ticket. This is what I'm here for. Definitely, you look back, it's not good, but at the time,
when your Robin's 31 years old.
Well,
what man adopts another man?
But even I'm trying to think of Batman and Robin. I think it's in I think it's in Batman Forever that he says the Nightwing thing. But yeah, but also you got Batgirl. Like how can I got to have Batgirl and it's Alicia Silverstone, which at the time I'm like, blonde Batgirl, this isn't right. But I'm like, whatever, it's fine. Like it's a girl from Clueless. She's cool.
Biggest female star they could think of to put in there at that time. So
hot off the heels of Excess Baggage, and you're like, yeah.
Well, I'm sure we all, because I understand. I went to the theater and saw it like, okay, well, it was entertaining and there was a lot of colors and Bane's there. Bane's cool. He's broken, but
I remember was it Burger King cups?
Yes.
Those collector things.
Yeah. They bust those out quite a bit.
Wait. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it was the Batman glass mugs.
You're right.
Yeah. Those were like the ones that I mug glasses are good too. But I mean, they had specifically they had the Flintstones ones. The Flintstones movie had glass mugs, and then there were the Batman, because I remember like the handle was the question mark from the Riddler.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry.
No.
We're just adding to your cultural phenomenon.
No, I'm thinking through now, and I'm just thinking about glasses that movies. I remember I got one for 2009 Star Trek. I think it was Burger King. I don't remember, but they did like a whole set of glasses. It was either Burger King or Subway. It was one of them.
Well, I mean,
you know which one didn't have glasses? Spider-Man.
That's true.
You couldn't go to the BK Lounge and get something from the BK Kids Club meal, and you couldn't get that. They didn't have Spider-Man stuff then. Actually, I think they had something at McDonald's. I think
it was McDonald's. I mean,
oh my goodness,
this was a big deal. Like Sony put a lot into this film, but it was basically Batman and Robin almost murdered comic book films.
Yeah.
Blade propped the door up a little bit. X-Men pushed it open more, but Spider-Man made it mainstream, and it made comic books mainstream in a way that, as a kid that grew up reading a massive amount of comic books, just warmed my cold heart. Like, I'm pretty sure I saw that at least 2, if not 3 times in the theater, because I was just so excited. In hindsight, watching it again, it's like, oh yeah, no, this isn't always so great. And there are things that not the best choices. And, you know, Tobey Maguire is Tobey Maguire, the greatest Spider-Man ever to exist, obviously.
He was at that point, he was the greatest live action Spider-Man.
He was as good as they had gotten.
We're not counting the Japanese Spider-Man, because that he wasn't Peter Parker, so it doesn't count. And there was there was a live action TV show one, but that was a TV. It wasn't even filmed, so he didn't count.
He was the greatest Spider-Man from a US movie.
In live action.
A live action US movie.
A lot of caveats.
There we go.
But you're putting those walls up really high.
It is all we had at the time. So I mean,
just the amount of world building they did as well. It's like, oh, you're changing the origin, but you're telling the origin story and making it cohesive. And everyone in this theater is so excited about it. People are cheering. I think it made like $400 million at the time. Like, oh, this is the biggest thing ever.
Yeah, I mean, not until I think Aquaman with Johnny Chase knocked it out.
Yeah, I think
it was one of the biggest Superman movies or superhero movies.
Yeah,
it was a phenomenon. I mean, I definitely do think, like, I agree. I understand definitely that it is formative in that way. And I as much as I berate Toby. The movie itself has a lot going for it in terms of like what it did for the genre, what it did for comic books to be more accepted. I still think to this day though that there's still a stigma that has never been wiped away from comics. No. And people just like, oh yeah, I love Superman. He's the best. He's great. What issue do you have? What story arc's your favorite? Oh, I don't read comics.
Not a fucking nerd.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like there's
too busy reading Michael Crichton, asshole.
Of course, but this well, gotta be smart.
But this still crested past that. Like, as opposed to just saying Superman, people are like, oh yeah, Spider-Man. Like, it's funny too, because like it was in production for so long. Like, there's talk of the James Cameron version that was gonna have Leonardo DiCaprio, and like there's all these different. They kept trying to get it. There was a Canon film version for a little while, and like all the different stuff that it finally coalesced into the Sam Raimi film, which to a certain degree, Sam Raimi at this time is not a known quantity.
No, like, this is the thing that makes him mainstream. This is it. Yeah. And I will say, I don't know how well this does pre 9/11 because it was almost, in some ways, a palate cleanser. Like, this is, I think, comes out May of 2002, if memory serves. So we're under a year from that traumatic event. And then there's this fun, exciting, action-packed, fairly light-hearted film that just kind of swoops everybody up. And it does. It sets a lot of the trajectory for what we get. It also sets the counter trajectory where we get the Nolan Batman. Like it becomes the counterpoint to things like this. So
it's definitely fair.
Yeah. Also Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Well, you can't go wrong with that guy. He's got a super villain face.
Can't go wrong with James Franco, but take what you get.
You did go wrong.
You couldn't cast Dave Franco just yet, so it's it's not their fault.
Yeah,
he's too young.
Got to get lesser Franco.
Then I will follow up mines with City of God. I don't know
Nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay. Rio de Janeiro, the beach, the nightlife, the romance. But 15 miles from paradise is a place called the City of God. A place where one man must infiltrate a war between 2 crime lords to tell a story the world needs to know. City of God.
How many of you guys have seen it?
God.
I know that when we looked, I'm like, I haven't seen that movie, and it doesn't.
And
this,
I'm
just gonna sit here and be sad now. Thanks.
The reason why I had chosen this one because again, there's a lot of good stuff in the 2000s that I could have chosen, but one was this became kind of the doorway into movies with subtitles for me in foreign films. So it was a 2-parter basically. Like up until this point, you can, if you follow the trajectory of this podcast just alone, like you start to see kind of my evolution of like, my evolution of watching films expanding a little bit. So moving on beyond just something that's written in a book that becomes a film to now being able to kind of sit down and watch an entire movie with subtitles. Before that, I would be, kind of bored by it. If it wasn't super integral to the story for a short portion of time, I'd be like, I'm going to pass on it. So if it wasn't like, them translating anything that Sean Connery was saying in Russian for like 30 seconds, I'm like, this is just too much. But this movie to me was well done. It also featured a cast of foreign, mostly foreign actors. And it told a story about poverty that I could sit through and be like, and ingest and sort of relate to. More than some of the big blockbusters and stuff that was coming out in the United States at the time. And again, it was also part of me still being insufferable, saying like, I saw a foreign film with everyone speaking their natural language. And I got to like, it's Portuguese, so I understood a little bit of it. But, and I also at the time developed a crush on Alice Braga, I believe her name is. She kind of shows up in a bunch of different things now these days. But she was the love interest as a late teen in this movie. You might know her from like I Am Legend, the most recent Suicide Squad movie. Yeah, like I said, she kind of pops up in and out of a ton of stuff over the next 10 years or so. Repo Man, I Am Legend at the very end of that. So, but yeah, this was one of those kind of movies that kind of just broadened my horizons for movies I was willing to tolerate and start to enjoy.
Gotcha.
I mean, that is a.
But it is a very deep movie.
That is a pick. That is a cinema pick.
Yeah, that's what I felt like at the time. Like I said, I was still being sort of insufferable. Like, oh, if you hadn't seen that, do you even watch movies?
It's on one of the ones that would have been on my honorable mentions for this area, but it was a 1999 film called Entropy with Stephen Dorff from Blade. Yeah. And it's definitely I haven't seen yours, but it definitely has the same feel of like, oh, I have all these emotions and I didn't know how to put them across, and this does it for me. Yeah.
So what do you have on yours in your 2000s if it is an Entropy?
Well, I mean, in my 2000s, since it's not, well, because that's a 1999 film, so couldn't qualify.
Just missed it.
So for me, it's gonna be
The Matrix, 1999.
if unfortunately, I was gonna say Matrix, I think is actually set in New York, so that could actually work. Is it? I don't know where it's set.
I think it's set in any city, USA.
Yeah. Mine's actually set in Chicago.
You're moving out of
Chicago for Coast. London though, because it's High Fidelity from John Cusack and Nick Hornby.
My store is called Championship Vinyl. Turn it off! It won't go any louder!
I can't fire them. I hired these guys for 3 days a week, and they just started showing up every day. That was 4 years ago.
Rob Gordon has a successful business and a dedicated following.
I used to go to the Double Door to hear you spin. You were unbelievable.
But when it comes to dating...
Hi, this is Penny Hardwick. Hi, Caroline.
He's still searching for the right woman.
What's your name?
Laura!
Now his search may have ended.
She does this thing in bed when she can't get to sleep. She kind of half moans and then rubs her feet together an equal number of times.
But his problems just started.
I like you with Laura. I don't think much of this Ian guy.
What Ian guy?
And it was, again, it's 2000, so it's definitely that kind of late, like, oh, I'm a very young adult. I'm just turning 20, and I'm like, okay, or I guess actually 19 at this point. So you're like, oh, this is a little more of an adult idea too, of like, oh, he's in a relationship and things are rocky, and trying to understand where he fits, and then if he does break up with his girlfriend, what is his life and what does he do? Like trying to find that structure after that breakup, and then also how he then begins to re-identify what love is and romance and what that is in the context of this new mindset. And it has some really good moments, but it's also like John Cusack's portrayal of how there's times where he has those almost moments from previous movies, like Better Off Dead, and things where he has brief moments, flashes like, oh, this is what I would want to do. This is what's happening in the real world. Like, dang it. Okay. More musical like points that are a little dated for me, but definitely have a feel like, oh no, I know those songs. And there's scenes set within the record store, because the main character, Rob, who is very much not 100%, like he's not a great character in terms of like if you would be friends with him, but he's definitely a great character in that he is well developed and nuanced. Like he does have he's a flawed character, but in a way that you like, oh no, it's understandable. But there is moments where they're inside there. He owns a record store, and that actually speaks really close to like my mindset at the time, because I just started working at a comic book store, and the way that they handle customers, the way that they kind of show them around, and like, oh no, that feels very much like showing someone around a comic book store. And that had moments where it's like, oh, this feels very like in line with my world. And yeah, I mean, I highly recommend it. It's hard to be like, to break down all the different things that kind of hit, and a lot of it is also reevaluating his love life and going through his top 5 breakups of all time, and seeing like, okay, how did each of those change me, and how did me reacting to them make me who I am now? And now I have to see that context on the outside.
there's a lot of self-reflection in that film.
Yeah,
it's kind of
absolutely.
and it's especially like you said, you're in your early 20s and you start to do some of that. So I can see why that would, like you said, that would connect so well.
Yeah, it's that quarter life crisis of like, oh, what am I am I gonna do? It's like,
what are we doing, man? What are we doing?
Like, yeah. And so it's like that was like where that movie landed for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's just, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I was 20 and I was like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna work this job until the next, and so on and so forth. And then also just the defining of like, okay, what does it mean? What does it mean to be in love? What are these relationships? What does all that mean? And the way it kind of answers those questions and poses new ones is really good. Also, if anyone wants to, Hulu did a remake of this as a 8 or 10 episode miniseries. And they recast Rob as a woman, and it still plays perfectly. Like,
so how was it? You know, seeing him.
You know that scene at the end of Braveheart where they rip all his entrails out and he's like, freedom! But it's like a positive thing, you know, because he like inspired his people or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that, but without the silver lining. We got a little bit of everything. Punk, electronic, hip-hop, rock. To quote our Leoni review, decently curated cuts, unpretentious location, owner's a little rude, 2.5 stars.
You guys have a bathroom?
If I let you go, I gotta let everybody else go to the bathroom, and I can't do that.
But I'm the only one here. You know that you do this after every relationship?
Do what?
No offense, but you tend to overthink things a little. Your ex went back to New York.
It's cool he's back in town.
We were both so whatever about that Lily girl.
What? Lily?
And it's updated and has much more of it does include more inclusion and has more characters in terms of not just 3 white dudes are the main characters, but they do a great job on that update, but it still feels like just like that original Nick Hornby novel.
Oh, novel, huh?
Yeah.
This guy.
Watching movies, reading books. So yeah, that's my 2000s.
Cool. I mean,
nice.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I know. Pat, did you see the movie too much, or you saw it as well? And
I mean, I think I saw it many years ago, and I know it's good, but it's not one I've ever really wanted to revisit. But I think that's just more general anxiety on my end than anything else.
No, it's totally fair. You made mention it, and Kareem saw it.
Maybe I haven't seen it now that I think about it. I get some of those I mix up, but please continue.
No, I'm just curious if there's any, like, we had so much to say on Spider-Man. I'm like, I feel like, I feel smaller to go with High Fidelity now. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Anyway,
well, I think to Pat's point, it was so. I mean, they weren't selling mugs at Burger King for High Fidelity, or like.
Fair enough.
So I mean,
but people that like that movie love that movie. Michelle, it's one of her favorites. She's very, very pro High Fidelity. So.
Yeah,
you know, it's like it has that kind of very much cult following, and
yeah.
So well done.
Thank you. Yeah. Do we have any honorable mentions for 2020s?
Of course we do, right?
Do we? I mean, you got to remember this is also the time where suddenly we have money and can buy DVDs, so it's going to be a little deeper, deeper bench here. The first one I've got to throw out is the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Stupid fact, Hobbit.
Because
Lord of the Rings definitely had a huge hit.
I will also say
you wanted to go to New Zealand, didn't you?
It is also basically our Christmas movie in these parts. Every Christmas we end up watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Then someone tries to put on the Hobbit, and we just, politely leave the room.
You're beginning to sound like that old Bilbo Baggins. Crap, do you what?
What else is on my?
Don't shoo them away. Go away, little man.
I will say The Departed, because I feel like that really started. Scorsese wins the Oscar, and then suddenly everything is Boston themed. Like, as it was New York themed, it's all Boston themed now.
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
Everybody's Boston party forever. And then
I'm surprised as a man who took what was it? What was the Japanese film class you took or whatever at UCI?
Oh yeah.
That you wouldn't have at least mentioned Infernal Affairs.
Well, I think that's 90's.
I'm just saying, mention it with the Departed.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm a little slow.
Well, because you watched Infernal Affairs, even though it's in the 90s,
Yeah.
you watched it in 2000.
That's true. Yes, I think it was part of the class, if memory serves. So
yeah.
The other one, and I'm just going high level here. The Dark Knight. Once again, that movie, the counterpoint to things like Spider-Man, and then I will bring up same time, same year, Iron Man. Iron Man comes out a couple months before The Dark Knight, and
wow, yeah,
really kind of changes everything in terms of even what movies get made in Hollywood and what don't now. So
no, that's definitely fair. I'm that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean it is a 2008.
Think of
so
it that way.
It is 2000. Like I see it so much further along in like more recent too, but it's 2008, so that's definitely within that scape. Yeah.
It's weird to think that summer, like I remember like, oh, Iron Man was really good. It was fun. The Dark Knight though, that was amazing. They're going to make more of those for sure. And that's going to define, and it's like, one more. And then we got the extended universe.
Yeah.
Martha.
Well, I find it interesting. Why'd you say that name? I didn't like as you mentioned them both being the same year. I didn't even equate that. I felt like Iron Man in retrospect was a palate cleanser to The Dark Knight, because I felt like in The Dark Knight, I believe is an honorable mention for me as well, because it was the like standard bearer for like how we want, or at least how I thought at the time I wanted to see comic book movies made, with that super ultra realism and not equating for things like an extended universe of flying people and magic and gods and things like that that the MCU would eventually bring. Anything that came out was always kind of measured against that. And with the I feel like an unrealistic, unnecessary like ruler, like, oh, is it The Dark Knight? Because that's the greatest movie of all time, even though, looking back on it, like I said, it felt like it was such the anti-comic book hero movie. It was really a detective movie with people, cosplaying at the time.
It's much more a Christopher Nolan movie now than a Batman movie in many ways. And I mean, honestly, it's defined by Heath Ledger's performance anyway. It's for everything else around it, it's defined by that villain.
Well, and I wonder, because I wonder if we would have gotten extended universes had he been alive to reprise the role.
It's an interesting, I mean, just anything looking at The Dark Knight Rises, you wonder what that movie is if Heath Ledger is around, because they do that such the hard pivot to referencing Batman Begins again. And it's obviously a different film if they can bring him back. So,
well, I think it also leads to the point where I think the buildup was that we wanted to see comic book characters, and we were presented were two guys who would eventually, I guess if Nolan had his way and Ledger lived long enough, become those comic book characters eventually. Like, we weren't presented with comic book characters off the bat. It was like, oh yeah, this is the Joker. We didn't really know much about his backstory. There's no real history between him and Batman to make it an epic battle. Oh yeah. So anyway, like I said, I had Dark Knight on mine. I also had Wall-E.
Oh,
because I mean, that's just a beautiful film.
It's a beautiful film.
Pixar, that's another whole other podcast. Like
it was the first one without words for a long time. There's words eventually, but it's also the one I worked on when I worked in a Disney. So I got to meet Sigourney Weaver, which I mentioned earlier, I had a crush on. I got to meet, I had to see the back end of how VO worked, how video games produced, how licensing works. And so it was a big project of mine personally. So Wall-E was right up there. And then eventually I went on to like work on like Up and some other stuff too. But and then Kill Bill.
Okay.
It was a good
film. That was only mainly because it introduced me to wanting to see more women in action roles and close quarter combat kind of stuff, and kind of pick apart, like, I wanted to see more of that. Like I got to see Kung Fu, I got to see Van Damme and a bunch of action movies, Seagal and stuff, but seeing the way Uma Thurman was and the way it was directed and kind of stuff like that, I was like, I developed a craving for it. And it's like, oh, let's see some more women in action movies.
No, for sure.
I'm gonna
Was that what it was?
Children of Men.
Children
That
of
one.
Men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, so those are my honorable mentions. Just like I said, Kill Bill got me going on female action, and since then I've kind of I don't judge every female action movie by it, but I do like to see the evolution of not only the fight choreography, but just the way that they write a female action character. Like to see if they've moved beyond her having to have such a tragic backstory to just be a badass. Like there's a reason why a woman just can't be a badass.
Yeah. And if they, I also find it interesting if they just, you can kind of tell when they just take a male character and then make it, and as opposed to actually we wrote this with from a female perspective and having that in mind. So
yeah.
Ken, what do you got?
It's funny. So I built mine and I didn't connect it over. So I've got a lot of caveats. Weird. Serenity from Joss Whedon, and just largely because it's like, oh wait, so this show can do, moderately poorly, or it can do poorly, period, or do well, but then still get canceled by the powers that be, and then still make it into a movie. That was pretty I'm like, oh, and I loved a lot of the actors, and it was very much like at the time, I'm like, it was all part of the oh, we're all in the underground because we know about this stuff before it's going to come out in the movies, and like, you guys didn't watch the movie, it's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. And it had that kind of underground feel.
Yeah, it reminded me of the momentum of fandom to push it into a movie. Like we couldn't finish a show, give us a movie at least.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's funny too, because on that note of underground feel, there's also Hot Fuzz.
That's just gonna scare it.
Which was I mean, straight from Shaun of the Dead, which I'm a big zombie fan. I love that genre. And then into Hot Fuzz, which for being Kareem has a specific moment. I was working at the comic shop, and so we got these tickets to oh, you can go to this, or press screening kind of thing, and we got to go see it. I think a month early, weeks early. I can't remember the time, but we got to go see that, and it's just from the moment they hit going. Edgar Wright's brilliant, but then also he's like by the power of Grayskull, you're fired, gun in the air, going oh, no, fire, gun in the air, going oh. But yeah, Edgar Wright is brilliant and deserves so many projects.
All the monies.
The monies.
I loved Hot Fuzz. It was actually my linchpin to Shaun of the Dead. I did in reverse. I was like, oh, I would love to see more movies like this. And since we got a chance to go see it and can introduce you now, I was like, oh, this sort of humor, this mixture of pop culture from both Europe and the US kind of commingled, and just the locale and the actors. I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I wanted to see more of it. And when you saw me Shaun of the Dead, because I am also a huge zombie fan, I was like, this is perfect. Why didn't this come out first? And you're like, it did. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
I did not see the commercial for this.
Yeah.
I would be remiss for a few of our friends if I did not also throw out Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, and Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder's, I mean, as much as I love Step Brothers, I think that's it's a perfect encapsulation of Will Ferrell's career, and I think Talladega Nights just kind of adds to that as well. Tropic Thunder is probably the only movie where I'll allow blackface.
Yeah,
and not even think about it as
you were good at Soul Man. I mean, that wasn't. You don't have to answer that. It's okay. I'm sorry.
There's no answer to that, Ken.
Yeah,
I thought
that's fair. That's fair. No, it's fair. No, it's definitely one of those things where you're like, should I be laughing at this? I should. I know what I'm saying.
I didn't even think to not laugh at it. It was just done so effortlessly and funny that I was like, well, oh, this is just what it is.
And it's making fun of it. I think that's very important in that it's making fun of the asshole wearing blackface because he's trying to be a serious actor. It's like, no, this is stupid. Yeah. He's stupid.
Yeah, it wasn't like they ran with it and said, oh, it's funny and no one's going to notice. They had, what's his name? Who was a rapper? I forget his name. that had booty sweat as his.
I remember that. I was gonna say I remember that he had a drink. I don't remember the actor. That's the funny
Pop an ass open.
He acknowledges it throughout the entire movie, and that's the best part of it. Is that
Chugging on some of Alpha's ass water. That'll bring him around. It's a cure-all. Man, what you coming out in movies for anyway? You need another revenue stream?
For your information, my revenue stream currently generates $2 million a year in charitable contributions for my community.
Hot damn.
And why am I in this movie? Maybe I just knew I had to represent. Because they had one good part in here for a black man, they gave it to Crocodile Dundee.
Pump your brakes, kid. That man's a national treasure.
I just wanted to throw another shrimp on you, Bobby.
That shit ain't funny.
Hey, fellas, it's hot. We're tired. It stinks. I'm fucking with you, Kangaroo Jack. I'm sorry a dingo ate your baby.
You know that's the true story. Lady lost a kid. You about to cross some fucking lines.
Guys, relax. You know what? Fuck that, man. I'm sick of this koala hugging nigga telling me.
For 400 years, that word has kept us down.
What the fuck?
You know, they do, like you said, realize what they're making fun of, and it's like this is awesome. Seeing and the also making fun of the Forrest Gump type casting in order to win an Oscar. All of that stuff, like just the mirror that it shines on Hollywood. That was an amazing movie. Oh, Jack Black's drug addiction throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. The character you're talking about with the booty sweat was Brandon Timothy Jackson is
the actor.
Al Pacino.
That's right.
Sorry, Ken. It popped
no, it's
in my
good.
head.
No, I'm glad you had it because I'm looking at the wiki trying to pull it out. So yeah. And then I think my last honorable mention for the 2000 era is 500 Days of Summer. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel, very 2000s with that casting. It's a great send up of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which is like, oh, people think like, oh, it's just one of those films. Like, no, if you watch it, it's more than that. It's actually turning that on its head. It's like, no, it's on him for what the problems are, and he's not identifying them. And so I really enjoyed that film. Plus, again, they've got good needle drops and music for it. Good, yeah. Overall, it's one of those films like, okay, this is on my top 10 movies of all time. But then we're trying to like break it down, like, okay, by eras, that one got pushed aside for High Fidelity.
Yeah.
Oh, that soundtrack was in every coffee shop for at least 3 months.
Oh yeah, you listen to the Smiths? Oh, it's trite to do now, but it's also like, well, it's one of those things where it's like when you get parodied so much at some point, people are like, oh yeah, it's like right, but if we did it and then you parody us, don't we get some kind of feather in our cap for that? And people are like, no, we just make fun of you. It's like, no, like there's something being like, yeah.
It was also one of the first movies I recognized as being in LA without LA being a character itself. Like you didn't have to make it like, oh, they didn't have to show you sweeping shots of the areas that you recognize. It was always, if you lived in LA, you lived in California, you knew where they were at, but it was never like, oh, we have to show downtown LA. And show the what is it? What's the electric company building that's super tall? It's right by the Dodger Stadium.
I don't know.
Electroville?
No, you'll know what the shot I'm talking about. It's where all the freeways meet, basically, in downtown LA.
They didn't play "I Love LA."
Yeah, exactly.
Which shout out to Naked Gun, Volcano, every other movie LA ever.
Yeah, you got to know. Well, it's like the New York one too. What's the New York song they always have to play in? Is it a Frank Sinatra one?
New York.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about Gremlins too if you want, because that's definitely in that. But that's.
I'm 100% down to talk about Gremlins too. Terrifying film. Terrifying.
Yeah.
Spider Gremlin still haunts my nightmares.
Fair enough. Bat Gremlin that dips himself in cement. It's great.
Electro Gremlin.
Mm-hmm. At this point, you just play the entire Key and Peele sketch and we'll sign off.
I think
I'm done.
I think that's actually, it is the end of our list.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
I would like to revisit this sometime down the road to see if we have the same films or if it flips up entirely.
Oh no, yeah.
I would be curious.
It'd be definitely changed because I'd be like, well, You know, this one kind of because I mean everyone has there's alternates on a lot of these that I'm like,
yeah,
this has a strong time period too. So
yeah,
maybe next time we'll bring on a guest and then we'll cover theirs and then we'll do one for each era for ours. So like we'd have their 3 and then we throw one each ourselves. That way we've got another 9, 18.
I like it. 100.
Yeah.
And then we berate them for their choices, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
You don't have a Michael Crichton on here? Who are you?
You didn't even read the novelization. What an asshole.
You didn't read the Silmarillion when you would have put Lord of the Rings on here.
You don't even know what happened in the movie. Pathetic.
Oh, really? So who's Radagast, huh? Oh, you don't know? Anyways.
Person's like,
if you don't talk about Tom Bombadil right now, I'm leaving.
Why did I come on here? I thought you guys loved movies.
We just
you know, Peter Jackson, you can go ahead and leave if you're in a whine about it.
Do I just press this button to sign off?
Yeah, you know if you read the book.
I think on that note, we gotta go.
Good night, everybody.
Peter Jackson.
Finals. So you mean like, what if there was like a brainy gremlin?
A brainy gremlin.
You talking about a gremlin with glasses who could talk and sing New York, New York? That's brilliant. It's in the movie Done.
Whoa, you said that nothing was final.
That was before I heard the words brainy and gremlin in the same sentence together. It's done, I love it, it's in the movie next.
What about a spider gremlin?
You mean a gremlin with 8 legs and a thorax just catching pretty ladies in a web in an office building? Oh my God, it's in the movie, I love it! Next!
What about a bat gremlin?
You mean a gremlin with leathery wings just flying around, flip-flopping, bust through a wall, make a perfect bat symbol in the wall, get outside, get in some wet concrete, jump up on a building and just dry in place like a gargoyle gremlin? We are cooking with gas now. I love it. It's in the movie next.
Could there be a female gremlin?
Lipstick boobies, bitch, you have me and little gremlin for JJ. I love it so much that it's not only in the movie, but it's definitely in the movie. There's no backsies on that one, no penny taxis. Yes, 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 in the movie, done! That's why we need a woman in the writer's room. Next.
I don't know. A googly-eyed gremlin?
But you do know, because you talking about a gremlin whose sole purpose in this film is just that he looks stupid as fuck, yes. It can be in the movie, and it is in the movie. Done. Next. What about you, Silver Fox?
Electricity gremlin?
You just said noun and gremlin, like you playing Mad Libs. You just like a child. You have the brain of a child. You do not have a high IQ, but you haphazardly came up with a gremlin that's just made out of bolts that is zigzagging all over the room and is done completely in animation. You a crazy person, and your idea's in the movie.